I just watched Oh Crappy Day recently, and since I haven't really seen anyone talk about it, despite it releasing in 2021, I thought I'd take on that task. This movie about an aspiring filmmaker with OCD is something I haven't seen before. Now, don't get me wrong, I, like practically everybody who has ever tried to research films about OCD, have already heard about all the regulars. Monica from Friends, Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, etc., etc. I was looking for real OCD. Something that wasn't just, oh, haha, aren't they just neat and tidy in particular? You can tell, even in the first scene, that this movie isn't one of those. Care was taken in the making of this film. The writer-director, John Lance Bacon, is coming in with first-hand experience. The main character's story was based on Bacon's own experiences with OCD. It is apparent that this struggle was a personal one. Throughout the story, Jared struggles with contamination OCD, repeatedly washing his hands when he touches menus, doors, and other people, among other things. This poses a problem for Jared as he delves into the world of dating, online and offline. It is shown well throughout the story that Jared's OCD is a way for him to stay in control, a common sentiment within the OCD community. His compulsions remain consistent throughout the story. 3 seems to be the good number for him. 3 pumps of soap, shaking water off his hands 3 times, and using 3 sheets of paper towel, for example. At the beginning of the show, we're shown Jared washing his hands 3 times in a row, too, though this particular element is not repeatedly shown in the film. Now, I'm going to get into some real spoiler territory here because I'm just going to discuss the whole film. If this is something that you think you might want to watch, because it is really pretty good OCD representation, the best I think I've seen yet, then please stop this video, put it on pause, come back later after you've watched it. For those who are wondering, personally, I watched it on Tubi. Anyways, let's move on to more about the film and spoiler territory, shall we? At the start of the film, he literally bumps into Katie, a friend of his friend, Marcus. Although he hits it off quite well with her, he is very reluctant to try going on a date with her. A principle that he is very rigid on is that once he starts something, Jared has to finish. I'm not sure if this is an OCD thing or not, but regardless, it is a thread that is woven throughout the story. So instead of deciding to go out with Katie, having just filled out his online dating profile, he instead waits for a match on the dating site. What he finds with the people he matches is a lot of discomfort and judgment, which, unfortunately relatable, but here we are. His compulsions obviously continue during these dates. Wouldn't it be nice if OCD just had a stop or pause switch for times like this? I mean, seriously. Jared runs into the bathroom after handing his menu back to the waitress, after ordering, always with the excuse that there was something sticky on it. The first 2 dates with Denise and Taylor, respectively, don't go beyond that first date. Denise is obviously frustrated with Jared due to his visible discomfort and his anxiety around his obsessions manifesting before he's able to compulsively wash his hands, especially after spotting a dirty knife at his place setting at the restaurant. The next person he tries dating is Taylor, who doesn't believe a career in filmmaking will support him. Overall, she seems rather self-centered. It's pretty easy to see why he doesn't go on a second date with Taylor, even putting past the whole, oh no, OCD thing. After these 2 unsuccessful dates, Jared finally agrees to try going out with Katie. As expected, it goes really well. During this first date, there is a bit of an unexpected hiccup, in that Jared meets an old friend, and through shaking his obviously dirty-looking hands, Jared's obsessive thoughts about cleanliness go off. especially as he just came back from a compulsive hand-washing session when meeting this friend. Of course, Jared tries to be polite, not only letting the conversation with that old friend wrap up, but also by sitting down and resuming his conversation with Katie, trying to fight the urge to go wash his hands. Maybe it's because I've dealt with these hand-washing obsessions in the past myself, but I feel this was portrayed really, really well. How Jared's main focus is his hands, but through slowly clenching his hand into a fist and checking, Jared tries to keep up a conversation with Katie for as long as possible. It brought back memories of my own struggle with that scene. It really resonated, even though I have worked past that theme previously. That scene really got to me, with the anxious holdout before finally giving in to the compulsion and going to wash his hands. However, the conversation that Katie and Jared have during that holdout was a great way to show their shared interest, as well as just Jared's interest about his love for Stanley Kubrick movies, and Katie's interest in just getting to know that. As a librarian, she seems pretty caught up on this stuff, even though it's not just books. My notes here literally praise the film's realism so far. After this, the date goes without a hitch. It even leads to the pair agreeing to a second date in the movie theater. Jared asks Katie to handle the tickets as he runs off to secretly compulse. Again. He joins her just outside the washroom with what amounts to a stereotypical "dang, they're hot" camera zoom on Katie, which, not thrown on, but it's neither here nor there. In the movie theater, before the movie, they talk about the shrinking budget of the museum. They're watching an old movie in a museum that hosts monthly viewings of older movies. I don't quite get it, but I'll roll with it. It's a really good bonding moment between the two of them, the filmmaker and the librarian. They both really understand the crudiness of shrinking budgets. Dang, this movie has to be real, now doesn't it? After the movie date, Jared, after going to his hype man, Marcus, asks Katie to come to his house to watch a movie. It's a big step for Jared, who doesn't normally allow people into his house. While Katie's there, Jared tells her that he has a pretty severe case of OCD. Katie's reaction is basically the quintessential, "everyone's a little OCD." That was a big yikes. Even with her attempt to soften it with, "I didn't mean to make less of it." Yeah, like I get it, but just, Jared makes good with it though, saying, "People are always saying I'm a little OCD, like it's no big deal." Following it up with, "It's just overwhelming." And she apologizes. A short time later, he goes in, and I mean dives in, for an impromptu kiss. He wipes his lips afterwards, but Katie is cool with it. Now, when I say impromptu, I mean it. I was sitting here, enjoying and relating to this movie, and then wham bam, there's a kiss, Sam. At the end of the night, when Jared walks Katie out to her car, Katie says that she wants to show him something at her place. He agrees, and they kiss again before she leaves. Jared waits to wipe his lips until she is very out of sight. We don't exactly see how out of sight because we focus on Jared as she goes out of frame, but it's implied that it's pretty out of sight. Good for him. He's getting better with that. Now for the time at Katie's apartment. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Her house is a very cluttered apartment, with her proudly saying that she had cleared a spot on the couch for them. Like, the only way I can think to describe this is... Okay, think of Howl's room in Howl's Moving Castle, but then just kind of turn it into real life instead of anime. It's like that. She admits to being a pack rat. Now, Jared is obviously starting to panic. They leave her place right away, but this is where I have mixed feelings on this movie. Now, I don't know if Katie has definitive hoarding tendencies, despite her dialogue stating that I just hang on to them. I like knowing I've got them if I need them and they won't go to waste. I can enjoy them whenever I want. Combined with the state of her apartment, with her family even saying that she had a problem. To my, I'm definitely not a mental health professional brain, that sounds like potential hoarding tendencies, but again, like I just said, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not about to, armchair diagnose people. Anyways, now this visit makes Jared's OCD flare up again. As he vigorously scrubs in the shower, Jared decides he can't take it and breaks up with Katie. I mean, fair. I wouldn't be able to stand seeing someone whose living space was basically exposure therapy cranked up to 100 either. So I get you, Jared. It sucks. I don't want to walk into exposure therapy apartment edition. Yeah, no. So Jared's back in the online dating market once again. The next date consists of a woman ranting about her exes. Ew. Not great. I get the point, but 0 out of 10, bad date, do not recommend. While out at the movies with Marcus, Jared sees a previous client who they had taken a couple photos, or wedding photos for before. This was shown at the beginning of the movie, but my notes didn't really make note of it, because I didn't think it was important. It obviously was. Anyway, so they see this guy that they had seen before. And they see that he is happily in a relationship, kissing another woman, and given how controlling the client's ex was, they are, from afar, quite happy for him. And a comment from Marcus makes Jared realize you don't have to expect someone to be perfect in order to be in a relationship with them. Which, honestly, great sentiment. Also good to remember for those of us who are perfectionists with OCD. So, of course, Jared goes to convince Katie to get back together with him. She's bitter after what had obviously been a messy breakup off screen. She thinks it'll all be the same unsuccessful relationship as before. But Jared does some impromptu exposure therapy right there in front of her. He runs his finger across the counter of the library and sticks it in his mouth. He doesn't run off to wash out his mouth either. He just sits there, or rather stands there, mouth closed, looking uncomfortable but determined. So she agrees to try again. The end of the scene does not have Jared running out to wash out his mouth or anything, so I don't know. So she agreed to try again anyways, and 1 year later they're living in, I can't tell if it's a duplex or one house with 2 entrances. But it's some form of living together that brings us to the credits anyways, and it's just that last bit in the ending that I have an issue with. Like I said, he's living with someone whose space is basically a constant exposure therapy session. I don't see how that could be mentally healthy for Jared. Even, or maybe especially with that living space situation at the end. Exposure therapy is great in bursts and controlled sessions. I'm not sure. Overall, it's a good movie. It addresses both the obsessive anxiety and compulsions found within OCD. It mildly addresses issues like the classic, everyone's a little OCD, without going and preaching on it. It covered this quite strongly, all in all. It was an entertaining film with a realistic take on OCD. And despite my issues with it, I do recommend it. I plan to do more movie reviews like this in the future. So stick around, and if you have suggestions for films I should check out, please let me know. If you have any other topics about OCD, mental health, or LGBTQIA+ stuff, let me know down in the comments too. As always, resources are in the description below. Thanks for watching the OCD Enby. Stay safe out there.